Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joe Burbach, and I am on the board of directors for the Paynesville Area Charitable Foundation. And it's my pleasure to introduce our two speakers today as we talk about the keys to fundraising success. We have Barry Kempton and John Limbacher. Barry is the general manager of the Schubert Club. It's the oldest arts organization in Minnesota. He also is one of my oldest friends. I've known him for 30 years, and that speaks to his patience more than anything else. John is the president and CEO of the St. Paul Chamber Orchestra. And together, as I was sitting down with both Barry and John, we were talking about the opportunities, the struggles of raising funds for a charitable foundation. Now, I'm on the board for Paynesville. I have never asked anyone for money in this way in my whole life, and it's a strange practice to do at this point in my life. These guys have been doing it for decades, and they have become very experienced and wise in what works. And we realize that that's kind of a universal. And so although we're in the foundation world, at least most of us are, and these guys are in the arts world, there's a lot that we can learn from them. So please join me in welcoming Barry and John.
Great. Thank you so much, Joe. It's for Barry and I, this is a real honor to be here today and to make some contribution to this conference, and most importantly, some contribution to the really important work that you're doing in your communities. As Joe said, Barry and I have been fundraising professionally in our jobs for a combined 50 years. And most of that in the arts, although I've worked in social service and at a hospital and actually at a Catholic high school. I've also done a lot of consulting around the country over the years with large organizations and small organizations. And one thing about fundraising in the arts, just so you have context if that's an area that isn't familiar, which is fundraising in the arts is life and death. It really is that simple. We start out the year, we have 365 days to raise a lot of money in order to keep the organization alive and healthy. And we have capital campaigns, and that pacing in the arts has resulted in the arts needing to be, from a fundraising perspective, very, very efficient. You can't be unfocused in arts fundraising. You're going to hear a lot about focus because our fundraising has had to be focused in order to be successful. And so our goal today is to take what we've learned over 50 years, distill it down, share it with you, empower you to raise more money in your community so you can have more impact and make your communities better. That's what we want to do. And one thing about fundraising in terms from an experience standpoint is the more you do it, the clearer it becomes. And I suppose that's like anything. The more you do it, you start to realize what really matters, what's most important, and what doesn't matter as much. There's a clarity that comes. There's a demystification that comes as you do it over time. There's a letting go of any fear that you might have had in the beginning about fundraising as you do it over time. Today, what we're going to do is to talk about the 5 fundamentals that Barry and I, in preparing for this, talked about a lot. Boiling it down, not to be basic to basic sense, but to be basic because it's what matters the most. And so we're going to talk about those 5 fundamentals. But those fundamentals grow out of a very core belief, and it's the backbone of everything we're going to say today, which is the essence of fundraising is asking. And I want to say that again. The essence of fundraising is asking. The essence of giving is asking. And that's an important, really important idea that again will be the foundation of everything that we say today. A few years ago, I went to the UK to speak to the British Association of Orchestras. And American philanthropy is unique. It's our national superpower in many ways. And so I was talking to colleagues at these British orchestras, and they had a burning question. Why does America have such a culture of giving? And my answer was, well, because America has a culture of asking. That's the foundation of it. And when I've worked with organizations over the years, some organizations are really good at fundraising, some organizations not as good. The organizations that are good at fundraising, the organizations that have a strong culture of giving, have a really strong culture of asking. They're not afraid of it. They're not apologetic about it. They care enough about it that they approach every call and every visit with the attitude that they're going to do a really good job. They're not going to wing it. They're going to go in with a plan. They're going to go in a very intentional way. Now, I want to define asking for a minute for the purposes of this presentation. When we talk about asking, we're talking about sitting down with somebody in a very intentional situation where it's very clear that you're going to ask them for money because you've been clear about that, where you make the case to them and where you ask them for a specific gift to whatever, a project, a fund. And so everything we're going to say today, that's how we're defining asking. And the other thing that is important to say is that we're mostly today talking about individual giving. We know there's other kinds of giving in this country, but we also know that 90% of giving in the United States is from individuals. And it's been that way forever. And sometimes that's a surprise to people. The most of the serious money given, not that we don't appreciate corporate and foundation, we do, but the serious money coming into philanthropy is coming from individuals, big chunk of it. So everything we say today is going to be about that. Now, as I've consulted around the country with organizations, and they always ask me to come and work with them because they want to raise more money. The problem, the diagnosis is always the same. There's just not enough asking. And there's a very deep tendency. I see this even in the work I do at the St. Paul Chamber Orchestra. Whenever there's money to be raised, well, let's find a different way to raise it other than actually sitting down and asking people for money. Let's have a cultivation event. Let's have an information event. Let's bring someone to 2 or 3 concerts. And there's almost this hope that organically, without a lot of muss or fuss, that somebody will make a gift. But we know that that doesn't really happen, that most serious giving comes as a result of really good quality asking. Now, it's easy to understand why that type of asking is often avoided because it isn't easy, especially in the beginning. It can be something that causes fear for people, discomfort, and I think the source of that fear and discomfort is I'm going to offend somebody by asking them for money. I'm going to make a mistake. I'm going to say something wrong. I'm going to jeopardize a relationship. But the truth is, and if we all think about this, we know this, donors are not uncomfortable being asked for money. We may be uncomfortable, but they're not uncomfortable. They're used to being asked for money. It's not insulting to be asked to support something in the community. It's a sign of respect. It's a sign of your belief that this person can have an impact on your community. So donors are not uncomfortable being asked for money. By the way, they wouldn't have agreed to the meeting if you're clear with them why you're meeting. They wouldn't have agreed if they were. So they're not uncomfortable. So it's coming from within, so we have to overcome it. And what I've always said to people is you can't think of fundraising, you're doing something naughty. You're doing something noble. You're asking an individual to invest in your community, in our community, to make it better. That's noble. That's not naughty. The other fears is rooted in this belief that maybe we'll make a mistake, especially in the beginning. But what we know about personal solicitation is that there are really clear best practices. Barry's going to talk about that. This is not a black box. We know what to do in order to get the best results and in order for the interaction to be very, very positive. And so those best practices are important to understand and to follow. And I think that they ultimately lead to whoever's making the call feeling more comfortable and doing a really good job. So a couple of final thoughts on this core belief. If you want to raise more money for any organization, I don't care. I worked as the Chief Development Officer at the Cleveland Orchestra. It was a $50 million organization. We raised a lot of money. We ended up raising more money because we did one thing. We made more calls, and we made more quality calls, most importantly. No more complicated than that. And I've worked with small organizations and that have raised more money because they found a way to make more calls, make more quality calls. It's really that simple. There are other aspects of fundraising, but that is the essence. So for your organization, for any organization, if you want to raise more money, master the art of asking. Master the art of personal solicitation. Make asking a superpower of your organization, and your organization will ultimately be able to do more in your community. So we're going to go through 5 fundamentals today. I'm going to do the first 2, and then I'm going to turn it over to Barry. He's going to do the next 2. I'm going to do the last one. We want to leave a lot of time. We hope there'll be questions and discussion along the way. You have in front of you a list of the fundamentals, and it starts, as you would expect, with the case for support. And the case for support to me is just so important. This is your stump speech. This is your story. And it should be written in a way that is not stilted, but conversational. It should be full of not just facts, but stories about real things that your organization has done, real people where you've had impact. It should read like you would talk to somebody. And when I see case for support where they're just plopping mission and vision in very stilted language, it's just not very effective. And really spending the time to develop a case that comes from the heart and answers basically 3 why questions. Why are we important to our community? Why is this project or this fund important? And thirdly, why is your support important? Often forgotten in a solicitation is, why is your support important? Why is it important for you to consider doing something? That's the heart of the case for support. And I would suggest to you there's 2 forms for the case for support. One is what I think of as the long form, a couple of pages that is your leave behind. I think you should never make a fundraising call if you don't have something to leave. Doesn't need to be fancy. It needs to be something that you leave behind that is the representation of your case. It's not a proposal to them, doesn't have an ask amount, but it's a summary of what you said. That's the long version. And then there should be 3 talking points for every call that you go on, and they're mostly going to be the same, but you should take your case for support and distill it into your 3 talking points for your meeting. Again, build around, why are we important? Why is this fund or project important? And why is it important for you to give? Now, I like the pyramid principle of communication, kind of three central points and then, maybe 2 or 3 supporting bullets. And you go as far on those supporting bullets depending on your audience. All this gets calibrated, of course, to the person you're talking. You're not going there to read a course. But those talking points are something that you want to make sure that you deliver when you sit down. Now, here's something about the case for support, or a couple of things, the more intangibles of it. The case for support is what gives you confidence when you go out and make a call. If your case resonates with you and you love your case, you're going to love going out and making calls. And you don't need to gild the lily in your case. All you need to do is showcase the lily. Gilding the lily does not convey authenticity and sincerity. But having a case that resonates in your organization, especially for anyone who's going to go out and make that case, that makes them excited about doing it, is really, really important. And that's why I love fundraising for my organization. I love our case. When I wake up and I know I'm going out for lunch that day and I'm going to have a chance to make the case, that's some of the best stuff I get to do in a week. And I think most people who like fundraising feel that way because they believe in the case. They may not necessarily like asking for money, but they love making the case, and asking is part of it. Here's the other thing about the case, is that the case is your stump speech. It's whenever you're in front of an audience, you have, not that it's a call for action, but it's an opportunity to make your case to that audience. Why are we important? Why is support for the organization important? Why is your support? I don't speak in front of any group in my organization that I don't find a way to make the case to those folks. So that's the case. And then the second fundamental
John,
is...
can I just
Yes, please.
add in just a quick comment that we represent organizations. You maybe represent foundations, community foundations, groups of people. The case has to be something that your whole organization is bought into. The storytelling, the stories, the individual pieces that you talk about yourselves can be built around the case, but they have to support the case that written case that John talked about, that you're leaving behind at a fundraising call.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I want to just underscore something I said. Oftentimes what we see, what I see, is that cases become amorphous and not clear and overcomplicated. That's why it's so important to distill it down into 3 bullets. There's no case that cannot be distilled down into 3 bullets that are crystal clear, that you can communicate in the course of an hour-long meeting with someone. Second fundamental, go ahead, please.
If you don't mind, that's a question about the case. And something that I found challenging in making the case is that sometimes what we do as community foundations is not a specific project. It's like projects that will come in the future, right? Yeah. And I imagine that in your work, there's not always a specific project, but you're asking for broader support. So how do you approach making a case when there isn't a very tangible project like that on the table?
Yeah, in most of what we do, most of our fundraising is in that category. It's not a specific project. I mean, it's much easier to raise money for a building, for a concert program, but that's not most of our fundraising. Most of our fundraising is unrestricted support so we can fulfill our mission. And so when I was talking before about the 3 whys that you're answering, that means the why about why your organization is important becomes so important, because you're basically asking people to support your organization and what it does for the community in the broadest sense. And I think that becomes even more important. The second fundamental is opportunities. And a belief that I've developed in all this time is that donors not only want to give to do good, donors want to do to be part of a community of donors that are supporting something. And that's a really important idea. And it's the reason why fundraising over time has revolved around campaigns. And you know, the most powerful idea in philanthropy from the very beginning of philanthropy is the idea of annual giving. It's just it's a profoundly powerful idea in philanthropy, because this idea that annually we're going to ask our community, as we define it, to make a gift has all kinds of virtues. First of all, it creates a stream annually of revenue, but then it also nurtures the habit of giving. We know that that's a powerful idea, this habit of giving. Giving begets giving. When people give consistently on an annual basis, they're more likely to give the next year, and they're more likely to give more. They're more likely to give to campaigns. They're more likely to give to projects. I had a donor say this to me not long ago. He said, we've given so much already, but I guess that's the reason why we're going to give now, because investment begets investment. And so this idea of annually going out and asking your community to support your organization is a really powerful, powerful idea. Again, stream of revenue nurtures the habit of giving, giving begets giving. And so those annual donors, in that process, there's another really important idea that's embedded in that. We talk a lot in fundraising about relationships. And of course, relationships are important. But going out annually and asking your community for money and asking individuals in the way I talked about, sitting down with them, that's relationship building. I mean, that is relationship building 101. And for some donors, many donors, that's going to be your contact with them during the course of the year, is sitting down and asking them for money. Not that we sometimes think donors want to chum around with us. They don't, or that they want extra meetings. Some do, but for a lot of donors, that's your contact with them. It's that time when you sit down and you thank them, and you talk to them about what's going on in your organization, and you're engaging about that, and you're engaging about your community, and you're asking them for money. It becomes foundational for the relationship itself. And when you do it on an annual basis, it builds the relationship, and often it can then become more, and there can be other touch points along the way. So the other really important idea about annual giving is that annual giving leads to legacy giving. And a question that I've over the years faced, well, how do we do legacy giving and annual giving? We should do more legacy. You know what? Annual giving is legacy giving. There's nothing you're going to do more powerful than annual giving. Have are people going to make their ultimate gift? They're going to make their ultimate gift where they've been giving in a lifetime. And so when you have robust annual giving, you are doing legacy giving in the most meaningful way. And so fundamental that we want to leave you with is build a strong annual giving program. And if you already have an annual program in some way, give it more form, make it stronger, make it more robust. Ask more people during the course of the year. Involve your board members, involve volunteers. Make it a widespread effort. It's not about advertising, it's about going out and seeing more people during the course of the year to tell your story, to ask for their support, to build relationship, to create a stream of revenue, to lay the foundation for future gifts, to lay the foundation for legacy gifts. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Barry for Fundamental 3.
Thanks, John. Just thinking about that legacy gift thing, I have several examples, I'm sure John does and others, of people making fairly modest annual fund gifts, but their commitment to your organization or commitment to your cause is as strong as someone who can afford to give $2,000 to $5,000 a year to your annual cause. But when it comes to the legacy time, when they're choosing what to do with what's left over, that they haven't used during their lifetime, that's when some surprises can come in. So it's worth paying attention to the people who are making modest $50, $250 gifts to your organization, because down the road they may just prove that they are able to support, and their commitment to your organization is as great as any other. Before I go on to number 3, I'm just going to go back to something John said at the beginning. We have, I think, collectively about 50 years of fundraising experience between the two of us. John has more like 35, and I have more like 15, and 10 of mine were working with John at the St. Paul Chamber Orchestra. And I have to say that most of what I know and most of what I've learned has been from him and through him. So it's fun to be able to be doing this presentation with John and share some of the knowledge that I've picked up from my experience and from my work with him. But back to the list of fundamentals. Number 3 is mindset. It's about getting yourself into the right mindset before you ask for a gift. What kind of state of mind is going to set you up for success? We believe it's vital to be clear in your mind that you are going to ask the person you're meeting with to make a gift. You can't let yourself drift into that mindset where you'll see how the conversation goes, or I'll make the decision whether I'm going to ask on the spur of the moment, or I'll trust my instincts. You have to be clear with yourself in advance, because in our experience, if you don't ask for that gift, probably nothing's going to happen and you've missed your opportunity. Occasionally it might happen, but it's rare, and you can't base a campaign on raising donations from many, many people, building a large campaign, if you're hoping silently that 1 or 2 people are going to come through for you without a request. The other thing, the big thing John mentioned, I think it earlier, is to be fearless. That's our mantra. Be fearless when you're setting yourself up for asking for a gift. It's easy to say. It's fair to acknowledge that when you have no experience or just a little bit of experience and you're asking someone for the first time for a gift, it can be daunting. And so we have a couple of things to suggest to help you get yourself in the right frame of mind. First of all, prepare well. Be clear about your case for support. That's, remember, the cause that you're asking the person to think about, why it's important to you, what are those stories that you're going to share that illustrate the value of that cause you're asking them to support in the community. Be humble. Bear in mind that the meeting you're going to have is not actually about you. It's about the cause itself. You have to show your commitment and your passion, but you're not asking the person to support you or to give you the money. You're asking them to support a cause that you expect them to be supportive of too. And the third thing is, you have to be ready to be rejected. You have to be prepared. You have to understand that there are many different reasons why a person may decline to make a gift. They may have other commitments to other charities. They may have kids in college. They may have medical bills. They may have reasons that they're not comfortable sharing with you. Learned an expression since I've been in this country: nobody bats 1,000. We've all, those of us who've asked for contributions to our campaigns, we've all experienced that no. And usually when someone says no, they're genuinely sorry. They can't make a contribution. As John mentioned earlier, they won't hold it against you. They won't get mad at you. But more importantly, even if they say no, you haven't failed. Being told no isn't a failure. Being told no today can often be the groundwork for a yes at some point in the future. The fact that somebody's taken the time to meet with you and to listen to you talk about the cause, the thing that you're passionate about, the thing that you're asking them to support, you've made significant progress. And perhaps most importantly of all, be ready to show gratitude. Be ready to be grateful to the person, to the people you're talking to, for the fact that they've given you the opportunity by agreeing to meet with you. Try to remember that asking someone for a gift to support a cause that you believe in is, and especially this is relevant to volunteers, I think, it's advocacy for that cause. We happen to think it's one of the strongest forms of advocacy. You're saying to somebody, I support this cause, I believe in it so strongly that I'm willing to step forward, take this risk, come up, ask you for a meeting, and ask you to support it too. And remember, if that person declines to make a gift this time, you've had the opportunity to show your passion, and if they decline, you've planted a seed in their mind which might lead to consideration of supporting next time around. So sent home once without a gift doesn't mean that you've failed. Anything you want to add? Great. So that's the mindset. We're going to the fourth fundamental, which is the ask. As I already said, there's no guarantee of success, but we do believe that there are best practices which will maximize your chances. First of all, we believe very strongly in meeting with prospective donors face-to-face. It could be over lunch, it could be in someone's home, it could be in their office. Solicitation letters and emails, they do have their place in the overall scheme of asking for donations, but they aren't anywhere near as effective as meeting somebody face-to-face. And it's important when you ask to meet with a prospective donor that you're transparent. Be open with them about why you're asking to meet with them. In my case, my normal process is to email somebody to let them know that I'm going to call them by phone about setting up a meeting in person. I don't want to ever set up a meeting and then ask for a gift, and that person's going to say, "Oh, I didn't know you were going to ask me that," and then there's that awkward, embarrassing silence. It's really important that there are no surprises. And as already mentioned, it's important to prepare well. If you're a beginner at asking for donations, it might be worth practicing on somebody. Ask a colleague or a friend or a family member, "I'm just going to run this by you and see how well it goes." It helps. And be clear in your mind again about your case for support. Focus on just a few points. Unless you're a born improviser, don't wing it. And as you're preparing, don't try to be overly sophisticated. Your comments need to be clear. They need to be persuasive. They need to be easily understood. I have examples in my own past of making the story too complicated, and I can still see a couple of faces losing focus, glossing over, and you've lost the interest and the passion of the person you're talking to. One other thing that is worth preparing is knowing what you can about a donor's past history. Considering what they may have donated in the past, you might see a pattern. You might be able to know what's an appropriate amount to ask them to give. And even if you're asking them to support your organization for the first time, maybe you can find out something about other organizations they've supported and what kind of level they've been able to support the organization at. Once you're in your meeting, having the conversation with your potential donor, I'd say normally take your time, understand the situation. If it's lunch, you've got time to be sociable, you've got time to ask them about themselves, you've got a chance to tell them about the organization, about what's going on in your community foundation, in my arts organization. Of course, if someone's said, "I can give you 15 minutes, then it's obviously important to be respectful of their time. Maybe it's appropriate to say, "Is it okay if we get right to the point of this meeting?" And they're probably going to thank you for getting right to the point quickly. Thank them. Thank them. Before you get to the ask, thank them for being willing to meet with you. And if they've been a supporter in the past, thank them for their past support. And then as you get to that point when you're going to ask for a gift, it's important, I think, to signal. What I would say is something, what I wanted to talk to you about is supporting Schuber Club with a gift for our annual fund campaign. You set it up with some transparency already, so it's not going to be a surprise. And then, most importantly, be specific. Be clear about the level of support that you're asking them for. That might be an actual dollar amount. It might be asking them for a range. But again, in our experience, if you say something along the lines of any amount will do, you're going to get any amount, which is probably going to be a small amount. And then just be brave, be fearless, go ahead with your ask. Here's something I actually said pretty much verbatim last week in a meeting over lunch. What I wanted to talk with you is about supporting Schuber Club with a gift for our annual campaign. And I'm hoping you'll consider an annual fund gift increase to $1,500. And the response is, okay, I wasn't surprised. I want to talk it over with my spouse. I'll get back to you. That might be a normal response. You signaled it, everyone knows what's coming, and you've asked respectfully. Once you've made your ask, shut up and listen. Just don't keep going. Let the person respond. Let the person ask you questions. Let the person say what they have on their mind. They've hopefully listened to you without interrupting, and it's respectful to let them respond. In our experience, if you follow that kind of method, people won't be offended, and whatever their response is to you, be grateful for their willingness to meet with you.
Can I add a couple? Yep. Let me add a couple of things to Barry's comments. First, to underscore how important it is to always be transparent about why you're going to meet. That it should be a comfort then when you get to the meeting. The person expects you to ask for money. Surprising people at a meeting is never a good idea. And that creates the tone for the meeting. They know why you're there. The other thing that I think is a really important part of the preparation is deciding what you're going to ask for. And deciding on an ask amount is almost always art and very little science. And I would say that the most important variable in deciding on how much to ask for is your relationship with that donor. It's not their wealth ranking, it's not what they've given to other organizations, it's their relationship to your organization. A common mistake, in my opinion, people will do some research and say, they gave $1 million to this organization, I'm going to ask them for $1 million or some amount. But their relationship to that organization was completely different. And so then you're asking for something that immediately is not credible with the donor, that will actually cause them to question overall your approach. And so base it on the relationship. How long have they been involved? Are they a new donor? What have they given in the past? And make that foundational. There's an old adage, you can't ask for too much. Well, that's not true. You can easily ask for too much. And when you do that, you lose credibility with the person, or they just don't respond because it's so off the charts in terms of the ask. So if it's a question, and I just spent, before Barry and I drove up here on the phone with a client talking about ask amounts for different calls, if there's a question about how far to go, I would always want to be a little bit lower and not, I would rather under ask than over ask, because you can always go back. And I think if you make a mistake in over ask, sometimes it can be not permanently damaged, but certainly damage your credibility a little bit with the person, and that can be really, really hard to recover from. The part about it being specific, though, is really important. Donors really want you to tell them what you would like, and I think they're often expecting it. I think they respect it. And I think that's an important part of the mindset is that our donors, I think our donors respect us for asking them for support. They know it's hard to do, and I think they respect it, and they respect the professionalism of saying this is what we would hope. And the other thing, again, to underscore what Barry said, these calls are almost not about asking. The asking is a small part of the call. Their engagement. You're engaging. You have the person's attention. You're thanking. That should be. I always thank at the beginning, and I thank right before I ask, and I thank at the end. That's my rule of thumb. Thank at the beginning for everything they've done and for meeting. Before I ask, I always say thank you, and then thank you at the end. And so it's just, the calls are a tremendous opportunity to say thank you. We position them and think of them as solicitation calls, but they're, as much as anything, engagement calls that happen to have a purpose, and that is to make an ask. And that's going to take us nicely to the last fundamental, which is around engagement. I think that for most of us who work in fundraising, we're constantly balancing asking with engagement. And the sequencing of that. Oftentimes, we think we need to engage for an extended period before we ask. And we want to introduce some ideas from our experience about how we suggest you think about engagement from both a strategic perspective and an efficiency perspective. We all have limited resources to invest in our fundraising, and so we have to make the most use of those resources. So the first idea we want to share is that we think of soliciting and engagement as one and the same. So we don't separate and say, well, there's an engagement process and a solicitation. I see every solicitation as an engagement call. And again, as I said earlier, oftentimes that is the engagement call during the course of the year. For a lot of donors, that's when they want to see you, is when you're coming and you have a very intentional purpose. There are other donors who are interested in having more touch points. A lot of donors are not. And so if you marry engagement and solicitation in your mind, then as you're soliciting, every year you're also engaging. And even when the outcome of the call isn't what you hoped for, you've had a really productive meeting with someone, right? You've gotten their mind space, they're thinking about your organization, you're telling them about what you're doing, you've laid the foundation for the next meeting and the next gift. And it's also an opportunity, again, as I said, to really say thank you in a truly meaningful way. There's another really strategic engagement strategy that we believe is time tested, that we've had experience with and I've seen implemented around the country, which is creating really strong, robust advisory boards with your donors at the center of those advisory boards. Boards that go beyond, that don't have fiduciary responsibility, but are boards that go beyond your fiduciary board. Advisory boards are a very powerful tool to engage a significant number of people who are supporters of the organization or could be supporters from your community. And advisory boards are, first of all, they connect you more to your community. Their role is to be thought partners with you. Their role is to be advocates for your organization. It's an opportunity for you to, on an annual basis, engage a group of people in a very meaningful way that you could not possibly engage all of those people throughout the year. It's just not, you don't have the resources to do it. So I would just say invest in advisory boards. Sometimes people say, well, it's a lot of work. It's actually a very efficient way to engage. And the power of advisory boards is that we're not only engaging the person with the organization, but they're engaging each other. So it just amplifies the engagement in a very, very significant way. And then the last part of engagement is saying thank you really well. I think this is part of fundraising. To me, thank you it's gratitude, it's politeness, it's all those things, but it's also engagement. because you're saying to the person in a sincere way how much you appreciate their support and what it means to the organization. Every thank you is an opportunity to remind them of why their support is so important to the organization. It isn't just a generic thank you, it's a thank you and here's what you're helping us accomplish. And so when you think about saying thank you, say thank you at an extremely high level and take it very, very seriously. And I see organizations develop all kinds of complicated engagement and cultivation that are oftentimes expensive. Nothing replaces a really strong thank you. Nothing replaces a commitment to saying thank you in a robust way. Barry's gonna do a summary, and I think the last thing I just want to say about our fundamentals, I should have said at the beginning, is that we believe these fundamentals transcend every sector. These aren't fundamentals for the arts. These are fundamentals that extend across sectors. They're also timeless. If you look at the history of philanthropy in this country, long before it was professionalized, these were the keys in the 1930s and 40s and 50s when a lot of money was being raised in this country for really important things, and there really wasn't a lot of professional staff, and there's nothing called a development director or a chief development officer. It was done by volunteers who figured out through trial, error, common sense, these fundamentals, so they're timeless. And the other thing about these fundamentals is that they transcend economic times. And they, in fact, become more important when the economy isn't so good. You don't stop, as you all know, you don't stop raising money because the economy is bad. That ensures you won't raise any money. But the fundamentals become even more important in those times when things are volatile. With that, I'm going to turn it to Barry for summation.
My summary is going to be very, very short because we want to leave a little time for questions or comments or hear your stories. The 5 fundamentals, they're on a little handout that's on all the tables, so feel free to take those with you. Hopefully it'll be useful. Just to quickly go over them, the case, clearly understand why your request matters, what is your motivation, the opportunities, and remember that the annual giving campaign is maybe one of the most powerful ways to raise money and raise money consistently and lead to other gifts like planned giving and capital gifts. The mindset, just be clear, be focused, be fearless, and be prepared. Your ask, we think, whenever possible, do it face to face, be one-on-one. And as John said, show your gratitude and be specific. And then in terms of strategic engagement, think about ways that you can engage more than just the one-on-one opportunities such as an advisory board. I'll just wrap up very quickly by saying that so Joe and I were having this conversation over a beer about him being on the board of a community foundation and being asked to raise money, and me in my job being required to raise money. And we talked about whether it would be possible to offer some kind of session at this conference. And I said, I'm happy to do it as long as I can rope John in, because he is in my opinion, one of the masters in the arts world, maybe beyond that, in terms of fundraising, and someone I've learned something from. So we welcome your questions. John will definitely be able to answer it. I may be able to answer it, but we're happy to open it up. Do you wait for the microphone and so that they can tape it? You can be recorded.
When you approach somebody for the first time, do you look at what they've donated before, or what their passions are, so you can engage them more specifically?
Yeah, again, I think A lot of our fundraising is unrestricted, and we almost always start there to support the whole before we branch out into other things. But and you often don't know. I mean, you really, that's as much information as there is in the public domain. I think you know by talking to people and getting to know them where their passions. If I didn't know if I didn't know what that interest, and when I mean that, or say that, I mean like validated by them saying it to us in some form, then I would start with more of general support and see what you learn from the meeting. That's why being with people and asking is so important, because one, you're accomplishing what you need to do, which is you're trying to generate resources, but you're also learning a lot and you're engaging. And there's been a big movement over the years for donor research. I'm very skeptical of donor research, just say that's my bias. I think you learn about donors by talking to donors. And that's to me the true way you accumulate information and understand what they're interested in.
Should be said that our donor bases are small enough that we can talk to everybody. If it was a super large national charity organization where donors are, thousands, tens of thousands, then it might be a slightly different thing with data.
Yeah, and even our donor base, we can't talk to everyone. I mean, we have almost 5,000 donors, so we want to ask more people every year, and that's what I would say. Just in the things we've said today, if you say to yourself, how can we generate more resources? Find a way to go out and make more calls. If you made 10, make 20. If you made 20, make 30. That's how you're going to raise more resources for your organization. If your board will join you in that, then you have a force multiplier that really can make a difference. That's why boards can play such an important role. So I think you had a question. Sorry.
Thank you. If I had 1 hour or $1 to spend on these 5 fundamentals, how would you advise me to spend that time or dollars on these 5? Is there a formula on it?
It's a great question. I think the 2 at the top are really important, okay? Because I think creating that annual opportunity for people to give and be part of a community of donors, I think is a really, really important from a structural standpoint. And then you can build on that every year if you create that as part of the culture of your organization and your community. I think the case is just, you have to have the case. You have the case. That's not. But you have to be able to get that case in a form that allows you to communicate it effectively. And you should. We revise our case every year. We work on it every year. We make it better every year. So I think those things. And the other thing about the case is, if that case reflects and resonates within your organization, it's more likely you're going to be able to have your board members help you with fundraising.
Is there another question back here?
Hi. So I am usually tasked with asking high net worth individuals, just from an older generation, what advice would you give me to be able to connect to people older than me?
Well, that's a good. You're asking 2 old guys, so it'd be better if there was some young blood up here. but I wasn't always old, and Barry wasn't always old. I have a lot of staff that are very young and who are out doing this work, and so it's a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, I think a lot of donors really want and like being around young people, and they're excited by that, and they get joy out of that. So it's a real advantage, and What I always say to them is that you just have to be yourself, and not try to be anything else. Be yourself. That our donors, sometimes you don't succeed if you're too casual. That be erring on the side of more professionalism is a good idea. Erring on the side of a little more formal versus casual is a good idea. But I think it's actually a really, really good formula, and I think when I see it really work well, the younger people on my team are viewing the donors also as mentors, and they're asking them for their thoughts and their advice and allowing them to play that role and establishing that kind of a relationship. That there's something sort of ultimate respect when you ask somebody for advice and guidance. So I don't know if that helps you.
I would just add that even if you're coming to this person for the first time to ask for a donation, they probably have a lot of history with our arts organization or with your community. So ask some questions, get them talking, because they're gonna show what their passion is. They're gonna show that they're proud of what's happened in their community. I have people telling me about concerts that Schubert Club put on way before I was involved in Schubert Club 30 years ago. People love to tell me about the very first concert in the Ordway back in 1985. And it's clearly something that has bonded them to my organization, the Schubert Club, for 35 years, just because they've got that history. So it's a fun thing to delve into if they've got more experience than you do.
And I think there's also universal attributes that we appreciate about everybody regardless of age: passion, humility, sincerity. So whatever age you are, I think when you convey that to somebody, I think those are attributes that people appreciate, along with professionalism.
I think it's happy hour time. One more question.
Yes, and I want to be respectful of time as well. Thank you. Sabrine with Cairo, Minnesota, and I'm so happy that he asked that question about young blood coming in and how to ask our older generation for a donation. My biggest question that I'm currently seeing is that a rise in donation being reduced. We are seeing even our middle class families reducing in their donation because of all the things that are happening with the climate. So can you just give me a little bit of advice on how to kind of double down on donors who have previously donated before or have stopped giving, and new donors that I want to ask, knowing that there's this concern and higher rate of rejection this time around?
Yeah. You mean the because of what's going on in the economy and the sense of uncertainty and everything? Yeah, no, it's definitely a very volatile time, and we're really seeing that. I mean, I think the first thing is it's important to keep asking and meeting and understanding that the rejection rate might be higher, but that there's value in making the case. One of the things that two things that I know we're over time. What I'm hearing sometimes is, things are really in flux, let's wait. And I always say, well, let's at least talk. And we won't talk about money, but let's at least talk so that you're keeping the conversation going. And you can sometimes ask without asking, laying the groundwork. It's not the ideal, but sometimes that's what you do in these times. And then I think the other thing is just acknowledging when you're asking that this is an uncertain time and that just so we don't look tone deaf. And I'm asking you for something today, and I know that this is a challenging time in the economy, and there's a lot of uncertainty, and whatever your decision about the request, we understand. Here's why it's important. You've been a great audience. We were worried driving here. We were like, what if we get done in 25 minutes? So anyway, thank you so much for listening and all your good questions today. I hope that we were able to be helpful to you.